when my career started at this other agency, my first day, I'm in the locker room getting changed, and I see out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, I didn't just see that. And so I have to turn. And like you said, yes, sir, no, sir. I look down, and the guy about 5 lockers down from me opens up his locker, and he's got a Confederate flag hanging there. And this is 1997. So it's not the 50s or nothing crazy like that. And I look, I see it. He knows I see it. I don't say anything. I just wind up getting dressed. And that guy wound up being my field training officer. We're still friends to this day.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
You're listening to the Black and Blue Podcast, a discussion and celebration of the roles of African Americans and other minorities in U.S. law enforcement. Your host on the Black and Blue Podcast is Dale Peters, a law enforcement professional with over 20 years experience in the business. Hop on board this Black and Blue train of interviews, current events, and pop culture conversations. So get ready. The Black and Blue Podcast is coming at you right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the interrogation room. My name is Dale. I'm the host of the Black and Blue Podcast. Thank you for joining me here today. We're living in some crazy times right now all over this country. But I got another officer, again, who's on the front line. He is a 25-year veteran of the Los Angeles Airport Police Department. Everybody, please help me welcome in Marshal McClain. Hey, how you doing, sir?
I'm great, sir. I'm outstanding. Thanks for having me.
So how things out here treating you out here in L.A.?
Oh, well, L.A. is great. Weather's always great. It's getting a little dicey right now with everything going on in Minneapolis. There's some actually active protests going on right now downtown L.A., so just kind of monitoring that.
Yeah, okay. Well, you be safe. How's COVID treating you guys, too?
COVID's been good. We've been blessed. We actually had, I think at one time we had about 45 people quarantined. I think the number was either 5 or 6 that initially tested positive. We got hit early on, just dealing with international passengers. So we had, I believe it was 5 or 6 officers went down pretty quick, and then we had a couple more after that. And then I actually just recently heard that some of our security officers are being quarantined because we got a positive case again. So the airport is still active. It's still, it's a downturn right now, but there's still flights happening. So, which means you still have people coming in from other places. So the risk is still there.
So it's been a big downturn, I'm sure. How's the traffic and the air traffic now?
Well, at one time it was bad as 96% as a downturn from where it was last year. I think it's been a little bit of an uptick. It's about 92. So the numbers came out. LAX was the 3rd busiest airport in the world last year. So we're hoping that once the economy rebounds, things get back to somewhat of normal. They're projecting a rebound instead of like a V shape where it's down and right back up. They're saying it'd be more like a U. Unfortunately, we're looking at the possibility of furloughing some folks. Hopefully, no one gets laid off, and hopefully it's only a furlough. But last report I got from the CFO from the airport, we're looking at about almost a $200 million deficit that they're trying to close by the new fiscal year starting July 1. So being that I'm with the union, we get, kind of inside baseball and all of those things. So it is bleak. The good part is being that it is an international airport backed by the federal government and those type of finances, those things would definitely help. The CARES Act is definitely helping. It's just going to take some time to get everything back because you've got a couple people filing bankruptcy that directly impact the airport. A couple of airlines have. Hertz Rental Car just filed bankruptcy, and that's a major player there as well. So that's what's going on.
Wow. Yeah. Now those furloughs, are they looking across the whole airport, or is that just with the police department that you were talking about?
So we're the largest division within the Department of Airports with Airport Police. We also have civilian personnel as well. So there's about 1,100, just under 1,200 sworn and civilian personnel. Sworn wise, we're the third largest in LA County now. I'm sorry, the fourth largest. You have the LAPD, you have the LA County Sheriffs, you have Long Beach PD, and then you have us in terms of size. But our civilian component makes up the remainder of that. So we're not quite 600. I think we're about 550 sworn. We have LAX, we have Van Nuys. We used to have Ontario, and we used to have Palmdale. When I started there in 03, we were actually looking at buying a fifth airport. They were going to make El Toro into an international airport, which I really wish they had, because those same people who were against it are some of the same folks that complain that they have to drive up to LAX to get a longer flight. So that would definitely help disperse a lot of the traffic. And I'm already starting to see the traffic come back now that people are out and about. That 405 freeway is just terrible. So
Yeah, well, that thing is always terrible. Always.
yes,
I don't think you got a break on the 405.
No, whether it's 3 p.m. or 3 a.m., it's bad. So
Yep. I know that area well. Try to stay out of that area as much as I can. So.
Well, the exciting part is the construction is still ongoing in and around the airport. That's from a separate fund. Some of it is AIP funds, which is airport improvement funds that are backed by the federal government, along with they have airport revenue bonds that help pay for that. So it's a separate pot of money. So all those construction projects are still ongoing. If you were to go down to LAX right now, you'll probably see 8 or 9 cranes up in the air actively moving. So one, they're building an actual tram system finally that's going to connect the green line to the actual tram that'll take into the airport. So in the future, you'll be able to park on an outside location, remote from internally of the airport, out by the 405 freeway in La Cienega. And then there's a tram system, an automated people mover that's going to do about, I think it's every 2 minutes, the tram's going to take you into the airport. Or if let's say you were coming from downtown LA and you hopped on the metro, you could take that down and hook up to that and come in and not have to use the car. So that's huge. That's never happened before at LAX. Right. They're working on a consolidated rental car facility. I mean, if you've gone to other airports, you see most of them are all in the same location. LAX has always been spread out, different locations. So it's going to be the largest rental car facility, one location in Northern America. We're finally getting a brand new police station that's supposed to be finished late next year. So some exciting things going on there. They're still building. They're looking at building 2 more terminals. Terminal 1, which is Southwest, the first one you see. They're supposed to be building a Terminal 0 just before that. They just completed another midfield terminal on the other side of Bradley, the international terminal, and then they're supposed to be doing a Terminal 9 as well. So it's still actively growing, and that's good for us, because that means when everything gets back to the new normal, we're going to have to actively hire a lot of people, a lot of recruitment, because you also have big national and international events that are coming that are going to affect that area as well. You got the Super Bowl coming up, you've got the Olympics coming up, you've got NFL teams are going to be playing every Sunday next door to us in Inglewood. So there's a lot of stuff that's going on. They're talking about FIFA with soccer. So it's going to, we're expecting a rebound when it does happen. It's going to happen, and there's going to be a lot of things going on to continue to go on. So
no doubt. So what is the LA, the typical operations? What does the LA Airport Police do, for those of us that don't know?
Well, we get that question a lot. We're separate and apart from LAPD. For the last, I want to say 9 years, I believe, or 8 or 9 years, all of our new hires go through the LAPD Academy. Prior to that, it was a combination of either LAPD, LA County Sheriffs, or Rio Hondo training facility over at Rio Hondo Community College. So that's the starting point. Because LAX is so large, it's a city within a city. So we pretty much get any any and all crimes that you would get in a normal municipality, with the exception of murder. We're not having homicides. We do have suicides, unfortunately. We have jumpers that come every now and again, holiday time, where we'll have some suicides there. But not typically. We're not having homicides, but robberies, thefts, workplace violence, domestic violence. We have one of the largest bomb K9 units in the country. We have a joint unit currently with LAPD. We've got a detective unit that's growing. We've got motors. We had a gang unit. We'll bring that back. That was more of a political thing where people didn't want to say that there's gangs at the airport, but all of our surrounding agencies and their gang task force would say, "Hey, we're stopping a lot of guys, and they've got their badges showing that they work at the airport. So it's kind of like, here's their real work, and when they're outside their real work, they're out there, doing other stuff."
Right.
So we had started that. We hope to bring that back. We've got detectives assigned to pretty much every task force you can think of when it comes to narcotics task force, joint terrorist task force, FBI task force. So because it's international, any incident can go from being something that happens to an international incident, in a matter of seconds. So I know previously we typically didn't hire young officers like 21-year-olds. They typically would hire folks that are former military or guys usually in their 30s, just because of that experience to be able to talk to people. Because you're on any given day, you're dealing with probably about 200,000 passengers. LAX is a business, obviously, so they're looking at it from a PR standpoint as far as the passenger experience, as far as that. So a lot of things that happen, you don't hear about it because whether it's good or bad, you have a business model that, hey, we don't want to talk about the crime, or we don't want to talk about the narcotics. We don't want to talk about that kind of stuff because their focus is on the business of the airport. And their concern is we don't want people thinking, hey, the airport's not safe. Right. So it's kind of a weird mix between, having a public information officer that's going to put that information out there and the PR person from the airport saying, hey, the place is safe. So that's why typically you don't hear a lot about the airport. That model's starting to change because, like anything else, if you're not putting a positive foot out there when something bad does happen, they don't have anything to compare it to. And and especially in our line of work, you want to be able to show the community work, the effort that you do, because we also have the area outside the airport, along down Century Boulevard, a lot of the hotels out there, Denny's. That property is actually owned by the airport, and then it's leased out. So we patrol that area. There was a large residential community that they're now converting to property to build the station and things of that nature. But our officers are still having area, like I'll give you, if you're familiar with the area, Manchester to the north, Manchester Boulevard, to the south would be Imperial, that goes into the freeway, the 105. And then the eastern border would be the 405 freeway. So it's a pretty large space and a lot of business and residential property in there. And then we overlap with LAPD Pacific Division that comes in that area as well.
Right. Okay. And you've been there, you said 25 years, and did you come from somewhere else?
I worked at another agency. I started my police career at another agency in LA County. I was there just under 5 years. Then I came over to the airport. Been at the airport since 2003. So I'm actually in my 24th year now.
Okay.
Combined agencies. So I've been a field training officer, been a terrorism liaison officer, been a canine handler. That was by far the best job ever. You get paid to play with a dog. You get to take your car home, get a lot of great training. And I had a patrol dog, so we had a lot of fun helping out all the surrounding agencies. And then the last assignment was a senior lead officer. I'm now currently on loan full-time to the union as a union president. What I like is our new chief has been allowing me to actually come back to work and not just straight full-time union. I can come back. And so lately I've been working 1 day a week, come and do a patrol assignment. So that's good to keep fresh.
Yeah, definitely. But the need is there for a full-time union rep, full-time president.
Yeah, when you've got so on the officer level, we've got I want to say about 450 officers. We also represent the LA City Park Rangers and a group of officers. They used to be called General Services Police, LA General Services Police. Then they changed the name to Office of Public Safety when they combined the LA City Park Ranger. They had the interpretive side and they had the policing side. So they had a model where they merged General Services Police with those park rangers and called it OPS. And then they changed the name. The most recent name is LA Municipal Police, which is part of LAPD, not quite LAPD. It's about 22 of them left. The other, I want to say 60 or 75 officers actually transferred over and lateraled over LAPD. So at one time you had 4 distinct police agencies in the city of LA. You had LAPD, you had LA Park Rangers, LA Port Police, and LA Airport Police. LA School Police even has LA in the name, but they're not part of the city family. They're funded separately from the city. They're not city employees.
Right. School district.
With that, yeah, school district. So with that going on, with contract talks and negotiations, it was one of those things we kept coming up short when it came to negotiations with coming to other things because wearing dual hats. Like say I was a canine handler, I'm working a 10-hour shift. Then I'm coming home. My wife's like, "Hey, you just worked 10 hours. Now you're working another, 4 or 5 hours at home on the phone, representing people, trying to get ready for contract negotiations." And we started looking at what are these other agencies doing? Well, the larger agencies, even school police, which is smaller than us, they have a full-time union rep, and that's what they do. And so the way that works is I'm a salaried employee. The union actually reimburses the city, or in this case, the airport, for my salary at about 75% of my full salary. I get the full amount, but the union represents or reimburses about 75%. And the reason it's not full 100 is because I still have to qualify, still have to do whatever post-required training, all of those things, and that would still be city time. Or any type of meetings like that is city time. So that's the way it works out. We have elections every 2 years. I've been fortunate enough that people have voted me in for the last several years. So I've actually been the president now. This is going into my 11th year.
Oh, okay.
But I haven't been on full-time release for the full 11. That's only been the last almost 4 years consistently. So the other time was actually still working and wearing both hats.
Right. And do you do a lot of work with the new hires, with the trying to get that started, recruitment and making sure the numbers of minorities or anything like that is fulfilled?
Well, not as much as I'd like. With our new chief, I see that change. Well, he just got here. He hasn't been here 6 months yet. Our new chief is the first African American we've actually had in the title of chief of police. So the airport police goes back to 1946. They weren't police officers then. They were board and services. That's what they were called, board and services agents. They wore kind of a blazer style uniform, and they would be the security beyond screening. When the '84 Olympics came around, that's when the big push was, hey, we need to have a larger police presence at LA International Airport. They first reached out to LAPD, and at the time it was the Chief Gates. He really didn't want any part of putting more LAPD officers there. So that's when they said, okay, we're going to do a massive hire and actually go full-fledged and make it a police agency. The folks who were there, they grandfathered them in, sent them to, at the time, it was a Module D course or reserve type situation to get all of their accreditation done. And then, of course, things have changed ever since '84. You've had different terrorist incidents that have happened. Then, of course, you had 9/11 that has happened. So you went from an agency that was under 100 prior to 84, I think, and before 9/11, I think the agency was less than 200, and so we've almost tripled in size. And of course, responsibility has changed too. But the storied history of the airport police is that back in the late 80s, 90s, LAPD wasn't hiring people of color. They weren't hiring after. I mean, the eight out of 10 officers back in the late 80s, 90s of LAPD were male white. So those folks who were still in the LA area that were applying to LAPD, the other option was the airport. So as a result of that, we're a majority minority agency. At one time, we were over 60% African American. Right now, I think the number is about 25%, which is still probably double most agencies around. So it's a different makeup there. I remember talking to some folks at LAPD at one time. You looked at the makeup of our board of directors for our union compared to LAPD's union, and LAPD they now have a vice president that's African American female. She's a sergeant with LAPD, but she was actually the first African American they had served on their board in I think 91 years. And that just happened, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. Wow. So it's an interesting, they're our big brother, our kissing cousin, so to speak, in the city. And so we're always in the shadow of LAPD. But I would say what sets us apart is, for one, the diversity of our agency. And we have a total different mission. You can't work in our type of environment. I think the same would be said for school police. I would say probably the same would be said for a lot of specialized law enforcement, because you have to do more interaction. You have to talk with people more. It's a different dynamic in terms of a regular street cop. Now, being that we're still in LA, and being that where we're located as far as LAX, we got Inglewood to the east, we got El Segundo to the south, Culver City and LAPD to the north. So you get your share of whatever action you want to get to that comes in there if you choose to do that. But you also have to do the other part. So community policing at the airport is really paramount in terms of knowing who the station manager are, the stakeholders are. We even have, and people kind of go, how's this possible? But we still have a challenging homeless population at the airport, because it's still a public area. Right. So they're trying to combat that right now. So when it comes to diversity issues, we don't look like most police agencies around. Even to my respect, the name Marshall McClain, most people don't expect to see me when I walk in the room. I remember talking to a guy on the phone, and he was telling me about, hey, McClain, you interested in joining the Emerald Society? And I'm wearing this for my brothers on the East Coast at Port Authority, New York, New Jersey. I went and marched in their St. Patty's Day parade a couple years ago. Nice. Most fun I've ever had in a police uniform. Those guys, they'll show you a good time. And I think every law enforcement officer, I think, needs to do three things, especially in California. You need to go to the memorial in California. In Sacramento. You need to go to the National Memorial in DC, and you need to go to Chicago, New York, or Boston and go to one of their St. Patty's Day parades, because it is just a different type of dynamic. I don't think that we would be able to do that in LA County, to be able to actually block off the streets and have a parade with a bunch of police officers walking in uniform. I just don't see that happen. I think people would shut it down. They would be incensed about it. Where this is in New York, and I want to say it was about a couple 100,000 people in the parade, and there was over 1 million people that came out to watch this. And this was just 2 years ago. Wow! And it was just nice. It was an awesome feeling.
Now let me ask you though, did you get to wear a kilt?
I keep threatening people that I'm going to wear it with my McClain clan colors, but hasn't happened yet. But a funny story, I was applying with another agency before I got hired, and you go in for the test and I show them my ID. Big corn-fed, redhead guy, probably Irish or Scottish, not sure. But he sees my name, lets out this big laugh, and he says, Marshall McClain. Funny, you don't look Irish. So me being a smart ass as I was, I looked and I said, well, actually, the way that's spelled is actually Scottish. And it's actually not an Irish name. It's actually an African name. And he had this puzzled look. I said, yeah. I said, you got your story all wrong. I said, actually, it's an African name. And we actually had some Irish folks that were picking potatoes for black folks. And then they liked the master's name. And those Irish folks took the McClain name. And that's how they came. Needless to say, he turned red. He got really upset. And he said, you can take your seat. I didn't get hired with that job, but it was one of those things like, why are you getting upset when you started this banter with me?
Right.
You know, and it's like, yeah, okay. And it was one of those things where I was just applying with every agency possible. And after, 3 or 4 different agencies applying, I was kind of burnt out. And as soon as that guy, said that, like, funny, you're not Irish, thinking it was a funny joke. It didn't set me off. I didn't get upset. I was like, oh, he wants to have fun. I'm gonna have fun back.
Have fun back. Yeah.
He didn't like.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't like it.
Well,
so.
he had the power and he had the job, and you didn't. So you're supposed to come in there, yes sir, and keep your mouth shut. So.
Oh yeah,
it worked out for the best for you. Let's
absolutely.
just say that.
Because I've had a colorful career, just being the union side of things, the canine side of things. I remember. Like I said, our canine unit is pretty large, and you look at the makeup of our canine unit. You don't have a lot of black male cops to begin with, let alone a lot of black male canine handlers, because that's a specialized assignment as well. So I remember when we would have our South Bay training with all the different South Bay agencies, and whenever we would show up, most agencies, if they have a canine unit, they might have 1, maybe 2. I think right now, currently, we have about 25 guys in our canine unit. LAPD has another 15. That's all at LAX right now. So from the patrol side, at the time, we had 10 canine teams. So we would show up, and it was, on that team, I think we had 3 or 4 guys that were African-American men. We had a African-American female. We had a Hispanic female, a Filipino male. I mean, so we had a diverse group walking in, and it was like, I remember there was a black canine handler from Inglewood, and he would always call when we'd have the training days and say, hey, are you guys showing up today? Because I don't want to be the only black guy in the room. And then we would show up, and it's like, oh man, like 10 of them showed up. What happened?
All here now. Y'all all here.
Yeah, and it was you're a black male, you've been black all your life, you're now a cop. So certain things that happen, I mean, some things are racist and some things are just, you're changing the norm. When my career started at this other agency, my first day, I'm in the locker room getting changed, and I see out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, I didn't just see that. And so I have to turn. And like you said, yes, sir, no, sir. I look down, and the guy about 5 lockers down from me opens up his locker, and he's got a Confederate flag hanging there. And this is 1997. So it's not the 50s or nothing crazy like that. And I look, I see it. He knows I see it. I don't say anything. I just wind up getting dressed. And that guy wound up being my field training officer. We're still friends to this day. He was a big time Civil War buff, all did the Civil War reenactments and all this other stuff, and very into the South. I can't sit here and say that guy was a racist. Other people would say, you're naive. We rode in the car together and never experienced anything like that. In fact, I wound up having to sue that agency, and he actually came and defended me for that and represented me for that. But it was one of those things where I could have went off and probably would have lost that job. But
probably
More than likely, I wouldn't have made training. They would have labeled me like, "Hey, that guy's a problem child." But like I said, I'm still friends with that guy to this day. Never had a bad experience with him at all. So when I saw your previous video about Deion Joseph and he was talking about his experience, I'm sure you're not going to find too many African American police officers that haven't had some strange experiences that probably wouldn't go down in other professions.
Yep, definitely. So on that note, what drew you to law enforcement in the first place? What's your story there?
Some of it growing up watching Chips as a kid. Me and my cousin. So I have a very large family. My mom has 8 siblings. I have 32 first cousins. If you run into anyone named McClain with the last name spelled like me, we're probably related. If you run into anyone named Culpepper, we're related as well. So it's a bunch of us. And we grew up in Pasadena. Like I said, 32 first cousins. So we had a lot of fun. There's not any in my immediate family, any police officers. Several uncles in the military. So when growing up, me and my cousin who wound up going on to be a lawyer, but we would always play Chips and play cops and robbers all the time growing up. I got into high school,
let me ask you real quick. When you played Chips, which one were you, Ponch or John?
We used to always get into fights over who was John, John, and who was Ponch. It's like, you were Ponch last time, man. How? Yeah, one of us who wound up crying, like, man, I don't want to be John.
Right.
So yeah, Poncherello, and coming full circle, meeting him now as an adult, he's actually Eric Estrada's a funny guy. But getting in, becoming a teenager, getting into high school, got into a CHP officer came and did one of the sober grad type scenarios, and then my plan was to go into the military and have a career in the military. I got discharged honorably for asthma. Everybody was going to Desert Storm. I got sent home, and I remembered that CHP officer. I was 18 at the time, got hooked up with him, and became a police explorer for California Highway Patrol. Thought I was going to go to be a chippy. It was like, hey, coming full circle, and then just started thinking about it more often about what CHP does, what other agencies do. Wasn't really sure. I just knew I wanted to be a cop. But because I got discharged from the Army, every time I would apply with different agencies, they're like, "Wait, we're not sure if you're going to make it through an academy because you have asthma." And I said, "Look, I played every sport there is in high school. Played soccer, football, basketball, baseball, volleyball. It's not an issue." Got over to Missouri and boot camp, started wheezing. They're like, "Hey, everybody's going to Desert Storm. We don't want a problem. You getting over there having an asthma attack or something like that." So instead of getting recycled again, I get medically discharged. 6 months later, it's an honorable discharge. So I was like, okay, what do I do now? Became an explorer. Then I found out about regional training academies like Rio Hondo, where you could pay your money and go through the academy. So after I went through the academy, met some guys up there, LA City Park Rangers up there, and other guys. And then one of the guys that I was a police explorer with got hired at an agency. And then because I'd already put myself through, they already looked at me, and then that's basically, he told me, "Hey, apply here," and I got the job there. And it was the funniest thing because I still remember a comment where a guy said, "Hey, you're the darkest thing that we've ever had in the front of a patrol car."
What the hell?
And he meant that in a nice way, and I was kind of like,
I can imagine what he. Yeah.
Do you just? I mean, did you hear what you just said? How that came out? And he was like, "Hey, I don't mean anything bad by it." And so, I don't mention the agency just because they had some challenges, and I have some friends there that are still there. But that was my first introductory to doing the full-time work. I remember there were times where I actually had to call other officers when I'd be on a traffic stop, and call other officers to show up, because in that community, people would say, "We didn't know that we had any colored officers here." They said colored.
Colored, huh? They
Like,
living back in the
wow.
60s.
Yeah. And so, good friend of mine, he lateraled from another agency, light skinned, very light skinned African American. He told me a story about same agency where 911 hot prowl. He responds, checks the area, nothing going on. Asks, dispatch, hey, have the RP step out. She won't step out. They're on the line with her. Hey, have her step out. The officer's there. She sees the officer and says, no, he's standing outside. The suspect is standing outside my front door. They actually have to coax her to open the door saying, no, that's the officer. And she says, I didn't know that you had any black officers working here.
Yeah,
And again,
well,
this is 97, 98.
yeah.
So when you come full circle to where we are today in law enforcement, there's still a lot of changes that need to happen. I think one of the parts that I think is still troubling to where some things we make, we take a piece of something and put them together with something else. I'm still even talking to people to explain to them that not everything is police brutality, not everything is racism. Some things that you put together aren't what they are. Case in point, I just had a discussion with someone this week, and they mentioned Trayvon Martin, and I said that wasn't a police officer. Yeah, it was. Like, no, that guy was a wannabe police officer, but he wasn't a police officer. But that was all lumped in. Someone else told me, well, it shouldn't be a crime for you to be black. And I said, you're right, it shouldn't. But is that always the case? Because sometimes I think we try to cover over the fact that some criminal act happened that put that person in that situation. And that's when it becomes troublesome for me. I mean, when someone tries to say that, and it'll be a much longer conversation. We get into tactics and training all that. I mean, what happened in Minneapolis, as far as I'm concerned, those were poor tactics. The problem with that
Definitely.
is when the department trained them that way. I mean, I actually seen the use of force policy, and the use of force policy for Minneapolis Police Department actually trains and teaches that technique of putting your knee on someone's neck.
Yeah,
They
yeah. A
even
lot of us have
they
gotten a lot of
yeah.
agencies have gotten away from the LVN, unless it's
Uh-huh.
really really extreme, and that's just with your arms behind it. But I've never heard and ever seen any agency do it with your knee. I mean that
Yeah,
just seems like that could go
I'll
wrong in
email
so
it to
many different
you.
ways. Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
I've
I'll
heard it.
email it
I've
to you.
seen that. Yeah, but I'm just saying, just thinking of it logically, that could just go wrong in so many different ways. Using your leg,
Yep.
using your knee on someone's neck, as opposed to
Not
yeah.
not only there's a section in there not only for a conscious suspect, but it even recommends it, or not recommends, but even speaks to the policy about you being able to use your knee or your leg on someone's neck even when they're unconscious. So
And you would need to do that. Why? When they're unconscious.
exact
That
exactly.
doesn't make sense, but yeah.
Whether they're black or white, and so can I sit here from what I know from seeing that video, because we don't know unless you know something different. I can't flat out say that that's racism. Now, someone could say that that's systemic racism. Yeah, you definitely have an argument there of how things have transpired. You look at the agency, people can start talking that talk, but I don't know that. And so that's the problem that I have being a black man, being a police officer, when sometimes trying to educate people how we do our job, why we do our job, how we're trained, and how sometimes, and I'm not saying Minneapolis is that case, because I can't look at that video and see what they did was correct or right or even necessary. I can't see why you would need to keep your knee on somebody's neck, even if you were trained that way for the period of time that he did. And at no time look at the well-being of the person. At no time do you render aid.
Yeah.
You can't cover that up.
At least just look down at him and say, "You all right, dude?" You know,
Yeah,
that didn't even
yeah.
happen. So
Nah,
yeah.
he was looking at just flat disregard.
Yep.
But then when someone says something like, "Hey, well, Trayvon Martin, the guy was just on a cell phone in his grandmother's backyard and he got killed," I said that's not really what happened. Well, yeah, it is. That's not what happened. There's more to the story than that. And when somebody takes a cell phone in a dark environment and takes a bladed stance with the phone in their hand and points it toward the police officers, that's not usually going to end in a positive light. So
Yeah.
That's the challenges that I'm having. That's the challenge that some of our officers are having. And then when you get into the community or you get with some of your family members, they're like, how can you do this job? How can you be a Black man and do this job?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How's it been with your family over the years, and especially when you were first thinking about getting into the job? How was that relationship going in with them, telling them that's what you wanted to do, and how's it been lately?
It's gotten a lot dramatically better over the years. I have two older sisters. One of my sisters went to Berkeley. She was a women's studies major.
Okay, that says a
Her
lot there.
women's studies major. Her keynote speaker for her graduation was Angela Davis. So there was a period of time that most things that came out of my mouth was wrong. I mean, if I said policeman instead of police person, I was almost everything I said was politically incorrect. Now that she's older, now that she has kids, now when things happen, she's like, that could have been my brother. So we have a different dynamic and dialogue now. My mother is also someone in academia. She was in a PhD program and got tired of school and just kind of, now she's a therapist and she's been a social worker. So my mom's a bit of a gypsy. She's retired about 3 different times. Love her to death. She's still going strong right now, even with the COVID. She gets up and walks and everything. So we actually had a conversation earlier today about what was going on. And I told her before that what I've seen over the years in terms of training, especially in academies and recruitment, I think is one of the primary problems in law enforcement. When I started the academy back in '96, we used to have boxing. You used to have to get in the ring. You had to box with people.
3 rounds.
That's
I
been
remember.
That's been taken out. You had day 0, and day 0 didn't end until we somebody quit. It's still paramilitary, but I think that the structure of police academies before has changed a lot dramatically in the sense, and I think a lot of that has come from oversight of individuals that don't know. They think they know, and this was the discussion I had with my mom when she says, well, you don't have to yell at somebody for them to learn. I said, Mom, look at the profession that they're going into. Do you want the first time that individual has somebody yelling at them is when they're actually out there on the street doing the job? I don't think you do. I said, so if you have someone who, if you're not trying, because a lot of agencies, unfortunately, are starting to shy away from the military because they're the stigma of PTSD or PTSI, and they're worried about that. So you're getting more younger kids, 21 years old, that don't have the same life experiences as someone who may have served in the military, and then they put them in that environment. Now you couple that with a police academy that's no longer a stress environment. And so the first real stress that they're having is no longer in a controlled environment. It's now at 2:00 in the morning in somebody's house.
Yep.
And that person's old enough to be your dad, and they're upset that you're in my house to begin with, and now you're going to talk to me, you're going to disrespect me in my own house. That's not going to end well. And so that's the challenge we have. So the other seat that I have is sitting on the PORAC board. So I've been on the PORAC executive board. We represent over 70,000 police and deputy sheriffs throughout California.
Yeah.
And
so for our listeners and viewers that don't know what PORAC is, what is that?
So PORAC is the Peace Officers Research Association of California, and it's basically an association of associations. You have, like, for example, Airport Police Association, LA School Police Association. You have multiple associations that are members of that, and you have different benefits such as legal defense. They have a pool of attorneys that your association would pay for by membership, and those attorneys would represent those police officers. You have also with that benefits in terms of long-term care and those other things that make up your full contract to really have a kind of 360 model to represent that police officer. So part of that job is actually lobbying as well. So when we go up and lobby Sacramento, and some of the just challenging conversations that we have, I think the biggest challenge is when you're talking about legislation and legislating law enforcement, and it's coming from a place where the individual has no actual concept of law enforcement. And then when we try to say things like, well, hey, come on a ride along with us. Come into a simulator so you can just get a sample of what it may be. The type of, when we say, hey, it's a split second decision, here's why. And then and then the individual doesn't want to be a part of that at all. They don't want to know how sausage is made at all, but yet they want to go ahead and make the change. And so I think our challenge has always been look, when we're not saying that law enforcement's perfect, because it definitely isn't. We're not saying that law enforcement can't improve, because it definitely can. But you cannot have effective change and not have us as a part of the solution. I mean, it's gone so far to where you're having some groups that say that communities shouldn't have law enforcement at all, that the community should police themselves. And I think that's a very naive approach to the reality of humans.
Exactly. Yeah. Because then the same thing would happen with those people that are in charge of doing those activities. You'll always have people that don't want to be held accountable. Always.
Correct.
I mean, there's always got to be someone to make them held accountable. So that's just, like you said, the nature of humans. So, when you're not working, sounds like you got a pretty full plate. When you're not working, what do you like to do?
I really hope the NFL is playing this year, because I love NFL football, college football too. But I'm a diehard Chicago Bears fan, so I'm looking forward to them playing the Rams this year.
Wait a minute, you're not from Chicago though.
I'm not.
How'd that happen?
I grew up in the 70s, and Dad and my oldest sister still big time Steeler fan because of the 70s, that time period. But then I saw Walter Payton, who's this young black dude just running over people.
Yes.
From a college I never even heard of. It wasn't a big school, Jackson State. And, his whole attitude of don't never go down easy, always go down hard. And he embodied that. And I just, started watching him, and then fell in love with the whole history of NFL and of Chicago. And I've been to Chicago a couple times. Every time I've tried to catch a game at Soldier Field, it's been too dang cold. I'm from California, so
you're not trying to do that, huh?
Yeah, I'm not trying to do that. So caught him a couple times over here.
You need to put that on your bucket. You need to put that on your bucket list.
It's on my bucket list.
Yeah, go
every
there.
time I go to Chicago.
Go there when it's cold. Take the shirt off and everything like they do.
I'm not taking
one of
my
the
shirt
letters
off,
on your chest.
No, not that crazy. My sister went back to watch a Steelers game in the cold, and she was freezing. So that is on the bucket list to do for sure. But yeah, love football. I was coaching Pop Warner for a while. I got two young daughters, and been coaching them in softball and basketball. So that's the pastime, and then active with my local church, and we actually have quite a lot of police officers at my age at my church, and so we a few years back started a security team because of the
church shootings,
the epidemic. Yeah, the epidemic of church shootings, and it was one of those things like, hey, we got so many cops here anyways. Why don't we identify them? And that's what they did. They identified all the first responders. So we actually have a pretty robust security team that's armed, a security team that's not armed, some actual professional doctors that are there. They've got a whole kit ready together, ready to go in the event that something happens. And so there's that. And then with our church, they have what's called life groups. It's like a Bible study. It's making a bigger church smaller. And so we actually started a life group for first responders. And so myself and another couple, she was an ER nurse and he's actually a firefighter. And so this group is actually firefighters, police officers, and dispatchers, and then EMTs or ER personnel. And so that's a weekly thing. It usually goes in 10-week sessions. So that's the other thing that I love to do, because it's cathartic. It's a coping mechanism. People can, it's a safe space for people to be able to talk with other people. And of course, being with firefighters in there, we have a fun time making fun of each other. Cop firemen.
Yeah.
So that's for the most part. And then, my wife is, she's a crime analyst at another agency as well. So we have some interesting conversations about things. And other than that, raising our two daughters into being productive women.
Yeah.
What
do they think about dad being a cop?
See, funny story. My youngest daughter doesn't remember when I was a canine handler bringing the car home and everything and the dog and all of that. My oldest daughter actually thought that I no longer was a cop, because she no longer saw me in uniform like before with the police car and everything else. So she's like, "Yeah, you're a union guy now. You're wearing a suit and tie, and And so when I had to tell her, I was like, "Hey, I'm still a police officer." And we actually had a picnic at work for all the family. She came down. She actually got to see me in uniform again. So we actually had a conversation just this past week about what was going on, because she was hearing bits and pieces from friends. Hey, what just happened? What's going on? And some friends of ours were talking about going to a Black Lives Matter rally. And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Okay, what do you want to go there for? What do you think is going to be accomplished?" I said, "Because I'm all about protesting. I got no issue with people protesting. But when you start burning things down and start lighting fires and destructive things," I said, I don't need my daughter to get caught up in that."
Yep, that right
I
there.
said, if you want to be active and socially conscious about what's going on, I encourage that. I want you to find out. I said, but I want you to find out all of it, not just what people want you to hear, so you can make the decision for yourself. Since she's in middle school, about to go into high school, and she's actually had me come and do a couple show and tells at her school. And it was interesting to see it from her point of view, because she wasn't bashful about, hey, my dad's a cop, but
so
she didn't advertise it because I told her not to advertise it. But she had some discussions with her friends, and she's like, "Well, hang on a second, my dad's a police officer, and he's not like that."
So for show and tell, you bringing in union contracts? What are you doing?
No, so
we brought this into the board, and they had to scratch this line here. And
no, so she had one of her electives. It was I forget what the actual subject title was, but the teacher was kind of like a CSI type thing. So she said, "Hey, can your dad bring a dog in?" I said, "Well, I don't have a dog anymore. I can see if one of the other canine handlers can bring the dog in. If not, I can bring in all of the gear that we would wear, talk about how we do searches and that kind of thing without the actual dog." Because that was part of the thing that I loved about being a canine handler. We would do a lot of show and tell at different schools and bring dogs there and stuff like that. So she was like, "Well, the dog might be too disruptive," but because the subject matter was dealing with CSI type work and how crimes are investigated. So then she said, "Hey, bring in what you can, no firearms or anything else, but how about all your equipment, your ballistic helmet, your vest, and then you could talk about how you guys go about doing an actual grid search, how you what's the methodology behind how you search for a suspect, how you do a containment, those kind of things. And I brought in donuts, and the kids loved the donuts, and then they had their attention, and so they listened. So she loved it. And then for a day,
Yeah.
she was big girl on campus because they were like, "Hey, your dad brought in donuts." And
Yeah.
that set
All
it
right.
off.
Easy right there. All right. Well, that's
Yeah.
good, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, giving us some insight about, your agency. And let me ask you real quick, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What does the future hold for Marshall McClain?
5 years. Well, I won't be retired yet because my wife and I are talking. We're both on the same track. We'll probably retire in about 10 years. So 5 years from now, probably promoting. Yeah, I would hope to be promoting by then. If not already a sergeant, looking to be lieutenant at the very least, looking to take the next step and be a sergeant, maybe retire out, finish out my career as a sergeant.
And you said your agency's still pretty diverse, so diversity for promotional opportunities in the ranks, it's still pretty good at LAX PD?
Yeah, there was we've got some challenging things going on with our past chief. There's multiple lawsuits been filed as a result of that very thing of discrimination. And this individual came from Orange County. We probably have more diversity on our board than he had in his entire agency, and that's not a stretch. So he came in doing some things that may have worked elsewhere. Definitely didn't work in LA County. He brought in two other individuals also from Orange County. It rubbed everybody the wrong way because it was like this false ceiling that you couldn't promote past the rank of captain at LAX. And like I said, we're very diverse, but all of our chiefs of police were white males. It's like, why is it that you have a very diverse agency, but you can't seem to promote past the rank of captain? So bringing in the chief that we have now, and I literally was trying to court this guy for years when he was over the Sheriff's Academy. His name kept coming up in the labor side of the union for the sheriffs, as well as in the community. His name kept coming up, and he's got a unique name, Cecil Rambo, law enforcement. It was a good thing. Just like people, hey, Marshall McClain, the older cats will say, hey, Marshall Dillon, Marshall McClain. I think the whole old Western thing. The younger group would say, oh yeah, McClain, like John McClain, and the Die Hard series. So we have that in common, where if people knew me and they knew my name, it would pass around. Same thing with him, Cecil Rambo. And so we finally connected and we started talking. And he actually applied 3 different times. This was his 3rd time applying. And that was a thing that we saw, like, hey, this guy is far more qualified than any person we've ever had. But yet it took him 3 times to get hired. And you had people from much, much smaller agencies beating him out. I mean, the last assistant chief we had came from Fountain Valley. It's an agency of 50 people. Mm-hmm. We put out more than 50 people on one shift. And so we're like, how is this chief of police from Fountain Valley more qualified than our police captains? And so that's what we kept happening. Why are you not allowing any African Americans to promote up? So he came in, and the first thing he did was promote one of our female captains to assistant chief. Black male's assistant chief now. And so seeing that at a time when we said, hey, look at our pool of captains. There's one white male, the rest are either black or Hispanic, but we can never promote up. So him coming in definitely changed the dynamics. Like I said, he's only been here 6 months. His predecessor, in my opinion, set us back about 5 years, just the type of things he was doing and the type of folks that he was promoting and the way he was going about doing things. Similar to what happened not similar in the case of the incidences, but like Beverly Hills just had an issue where their chief of police had multiple lawsuits over a short period of time. And that's what we're experiencing right now. And I think only because of COVID and shutting down the courts is the only reason why you haven't seen a lot of that come out. But
right.
it's going to happen soon. And I think that our agency, our department, the city is going to have to make a decision as to whether they're going to look at paying out millions of dollars in lawsuits, or if they're going to look out saying, hey, we've got the new chief here. His predecessor is still there in an administrative non-sworn position above him. It's time to let him go, and so we can heal and move on, because we got a lot of great ideas of doing what we do and expanding on it. Like I said, with all the things happening, and doing another massive hiring and continue hiring more diversity in our agency.
Yeah. Hearing what you're saying about that, how, you guys are a large, diverse agency, but yet a lot of your higher ups weren't diverse, weren't minorities. I've been hearing that discussion lately with the NFL. 80% of the players are African American, but there's a real small number of coaches and definitely none in the front office, and then zero actually in ownership. So there a lot of Rooney Rule talk is up now. So yes, it's interesting. All this is still going on in our country. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's where we come back to full circle. When I said that people ask the question, how can you be a black man and be in the profession that you're in? Well, how you expect there to be actually any change in that environment if you don't have diversity to start? I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I noticed a change in all environments when you start seeing people break that glass ceiling, and not saying that you're going to automatically look up and say that all police officers need to be black, because that would be ridiculous. We're only 13% of this country. But if you're patrolling an area, it should reflect the area that you're patrolling somewhat. And in my opinion, if you can't recruit people from the area that you patrol, then you need to look at that agency and what is it that your agency is doing to market yourself to the people in that environment. Because it's still, in my opinion, law enforcement is still a very noble profession. We do have some bad actors in here, case in point, Minneapolis, and a lot of other things we can name. But by and large, we have over 800,000 police officers in this country.
Right. Yeah.
That's a large number. And so that doesn't reflect of all the incidents that were happening.
Yeah, but you've been seeing, across the board, across the country, recruitment is down everywhere.
Yes.
And that's just because, the younger kids don't want to be cops. And for whatever reason, they're taking those tech jobs, and I don't blame them if they want to be Bezos and make $1 trillion. Hey, I'm all for that too. That's what I'm gonna do when I grow up. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do when I grow up. I'm gonna do something. Bamazon. Keep doing what you're doing, getting your message out there, and letting people know. I mean, putting the humanity back into law enforcement. And I think, like with anything else, if you see people like yourself growing up and something you can aspire to, I think that really changes the narrative when you can say, hey, that person looks like me, and that person acts like me, that person talks like me. Yeah. You know what? Maybe I can do that job too. Yeah, that's what the whole point of this podcast, this show, Black and Blue. That's what it's all about. Just letting people see.
I appreciate you, man. I want to know how I can get that shirt.
Oh yeah, well we'll talk off air, and I'll definitely get you one. So on that note, let's wrap this up. But before I let you go, I'm sure you've seen other episodes. I like to play a game with my guests before they get out of here. So let me set this up for you.
Wait, hang on, I got another call. Who this? Oh, hi, Mama.
Who dis? What kind of way is that to answer the phone?
This game is called Who Dis. I'm going to play some sound bites and see if you can guess who it is. And if you get enough, then you're going to be the winner. And if you don't, I don't want to call you the loser. All right. So pretty simple, right?
All right. Got it.
All right. So here's your first one here.
Did I do that?
Did you hear that?
Urkel?
Oh, that is. Yes.
Did I do that?
Real simple. Off to a good start. Yeah, so when you hear that, you can tell me who the character is or what show that was from. So you don't got to be all specific, but you got that one right. Here's your next one.
I love it when a plan comes together.
come on. That's the A-Team.
Yes.
I love it when a plan comes together.
That's Hannibal from the A-Team. Yeah, this is testing your pop culture knowledge here. Here's your next one.
Jane, stop this crazy thing!
Oh, the Jetsons.
The Jetsons, yes, sir.
Jane, stop this crazy thing!
Yeah, all right. Here's your next one.
You gotta come a little harder, dog. You gotta figure it out.
One more time.
You gotta come a little harder, dog. You gotta figure it out.
Who do you think that is? Show or the name of the character?
Oh, I know it. Can I get a hint?
No hints. No hints. 5, 4,
No,
3,
you got me.
2. Oh,
You gotta
that's
come a little harder, dog. You gotta figure it out.
Randy Jackson from
Randy
American
Jackson,
Idol.
Man. Yep.
With the dog, I thought you would have got that.
Yep,
That's
the
his
dog.
catchphrase.
It was clicking. It just.
Yeah. All
I didn't
right.
really watch American Idol, but I knew that.
You knew that one. All right. Here's your next one.
Hated it.
That's in living color.
That's in living color, definitely.
Hated it.
Yeah. Who's that?
Two
David
snaps
Allen
up.
Greer and Marlon Wayans. Yeah.
Wayans,
as the
yep.
Men on Film. All right. Yeah, doing pretty
Bring
good
that
here.
show back.
Yep. Here's your next one.
Hey, let's break up the play.
Fat Albert.
Definitely Fat Albert.
Hey, let's break up the play.
Yeah. All
Bill
right.
Cosby, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Here's your next one. I know that was kind of
wait.
short. Let's try that again. He said, golly.
Oh, was that Gomer Pyle?
That's Gomer Pyle. I think you got it more from me than you did from the soundbite.
Yeah, you're right.
Right? All right, a couple more for you. Here's your next one.
You big dummy!
Did you get that one? You need to hear it again?
No, I know it. Was that Sanford?
You big dummy!
Definitely Sanford, Fred
You
Sanford.
big dummy!
Yeah, Fred Sanford from Sanford
Red
and Son.
Fox.
Yes,
Yeah,
Red Fox. And here's your last one. You know that one?
Yeah. Wait, Adam's Family? Lurch?
Definitely Lurch from Adams Family. All right, man. You got 8 out of 9. So we're going to call you the winner.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, 8 out of 9. I'm glad you got through that one.
Yeah, grew up in the 80s.
Right? And stuck to that TV, that boob tube, right? And we are back. All right, cool, man. I appreciate you.
Likewise.
You blew through that game like it was nothing. You almost had that last one. Almost had that one that you missed, Randy Jackson. You had it on the tip of your tongue too, didn't you?
Yep.
All right, brother. I appreciate you. You be safe out
Likewise.
there at the
You too.
LAX, and we'll talk soon. And
Absolutely.
yeah, wash your hands, wear your mask, all that good stuff. All
Yep.
right.
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll talk.
Stay safe. God bless.
You too. All right, Square Pegs, that's it for this episode of the Black and Blue Podcast. I want to thank my guests on this episode, Marshall McClain of the Los Angeles Airport Police Department, for joining me here today. My man, you are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm blessed to have had you on this episode. Thank you. And if you guys out there enjoy this kind of content and you want to listen or see stuff like this in the future, make sure you like and subscribe to the show on the Black and Blue Podcast YouTube channel and every single podcast platform there is. I'll be back next week with another interesting guest. Same black time, same black channel. But till then, come on now. Y'all know what to do already. Stay black and blue. I'll holla at you. Peace.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.